Hello everyone, today I'm looking at Hollow Knight Silksong. Wow, this was a very long game and a really, really fun one. It's always been a constant question to me as I've been playing Silksong, is this better than the original Hollow Knight? And I honestly don't really remember much of Hollow Knight 1. I know I did roughly around 60 to 70 hours in that, and this one I put in about 90 hours, 87 to be exact. So that's my one kind of first critique out the game, or out the gate, is that I do like this game. It's very well made, it's very well crafted, there's so many secrets and optional bosses and objectives, but it is really too long. Like 90 hours is a lot. That's longer than most RPGs. And while the content itself, it is good, it is a good game for sure, it's just there's so much of it. But to be fair, I guess, it did not feel like 90 hours, it felt like maybe 50 hours, it felt like half that. But it was still a great experience overall, and I had a lot of fun playing it. Again, it's been a while since I played the original Hollow Knight, so playing this one, it's almost funny because this came out 2025, Hollow Knight was 2017, so it's almost a decade, 7 years roughly, and it's a miracle that Silksong even exists. You know, very similar to the concept of a swan song, that this was their last kind of hurrah. And in terms of Team Cherry, I'm not exactly sure why it took so long. The only thing I'll say is that this is the only game where it feels like this did literally take 7 years, or there is 7 years worth of content in this game, and there is just a lot, frankly. Of course, there's a lot of reused environments, assets, enemy types, but there's so much new stuff that it does feel like a real game. I'm sure most people already know this, but Silksong started out as just a DLC feature for Hollow Knight, and Hollow Knight itself had a few DLCs, but this one kind of grew out to be a full game, and it took them a really long time just to turn it into a full-fledged overall game, and it really does. I think it delivers. I really do think this is Game of the Year potential, because for a game being almost 100 hours long and being as good as it was and consistently fun, like there wasn't really a time where I felt, oh no, I'm not having fun, or this is tedious or something. I mean, I'll be honest, there was a point where I beat the final boss in Act 2 and it rolled credits, but if you beat the final boss another way, then it reveals, oh yeah, there's still Act 3. So there was this sensation of, look, I just want to be done with this game. I just want it to be over. And you know, it just took a while. But aside from that, I never felt like, oh, I was never bored. There's always an objective to go do. There's always a side quest. There was always some secret hidden room. And there are a lot of secrets in this game. And for as vast and as expansive as the game got, it did feel manageable in a way. And all the upgrades made a lot of sense. For example, in Act 3, one of the first upgrades you get is the ability to essentially warp to any travel station. So if you're ever having a long time commuting or warping or you're backtracking, that just eliminates all that kind of stuff. And so it's really great that they establish Act 3 as really the backtracking act. I was kind of worried that it would be a whole new world. No, Act 3 is just more of a redux where enemies are slightly harder. There's not really a lot of new areas to discover, but it's really just going back and finding all the little hidden secrets and everything, and also some new objectives. Again, I really liked the different crest system, how there will be different ways to change your play style. And so the crest system allows you to choose your different play styles. So you might have something that's more offensive or defensive, but also it changes the structure as to what you can equip. And all the tools and equipables are really fun and very, very different and unique. So of course you have your main kind of silk attack, which can be a series of darts or dashing or whatever, which frankly I felt was a little bit wasted in a sense, because like I always kept that on the backup for healing. that's kind of the main way that you would heal in the game. And so boss fights, I would rarely use my Silk abilities. Then you would have your tools, which, can be a combination of 1, 2, or sometimes 3 different objects. And there's very cool enhancements for that. For example, one build was the Architect build, where you can have 3 different items at once, and you can have 2 blue loadouts that allow it to double the ammunition, also poison them. And at that point, it just becomes ridiculously overpowered. Again, it's really fun to kind of explore the game, find different hidden little, niches in the walls, and find special tools or special upgrades, and just the feeling of exploration and being able to just discover so much in this game feels really great. NPCs are good. Music is really good, I would say. It's not a big orchestral thing that really is going to hit you and impress you like a Nier game or something, but I find that Silksong's soundtrack is much more subtle, much more orchestral. There's a lot of sort of choral sort of tracks, but a lot of just violins, atmospheric, and there is, I think, a lot of atmosphere in Silksong, and I think in Hollow Knight in general, and I think that's really what makes it stand out, especially as a 2D game, is the attention to sound design. Is that a lot of places are very quiet, or there's no music at all, or it really sets a mood, and a lot of things just tend to echo in Silksong, and I really do appreciate that from a game design standpoint, because again, 2D action adventure, backtracking, whatever you want to call them, games kind of suffer from a lack of depth. But in Silksong, the backgrounds are multi-layered. A lot of times you'll have bosses that are actually in the background layer of these sort of mosaic painting-like experiences, and it's only until they jump into the foreground that you can really see them. There's always something moving in the air, like air particles, dust, something like that. Again, there's always this kind of yawning cavern kind of feeling where everything is large and big and empty and very haunting with enemies within. And the game is very difficult. I was trying to remember Hollow Knight and trying to compare that, but it's been too long, and I really can't say if this is harder or easier than Hollow Knight. I want to say it's a little bit harder. There were definitely some points of the game where I just absolutely gave up, and I think everyone kind of agrees that the worst level or encounter in this game is High Halls. And it's funny, it's the worst not for a very obvious reason, where it's a hard encounter. And that's what I do love about this game, how it feels like 2D Dark Souls, which is what Hollow Knight kind of marketed itself as, or what people said about it at the time, is that it's 2D, but it's the Dark Souls. It has that same kind of hard difficulty spike, and it's kind of that perseverance mindset of trying a boss fight over and over and over again. With this one, what's frustrating about High Halls is that when it's a mob boss, so it's not really that bad at first. You're just finding a bunch of waves of enemies, but then it has like one wave, and then 2 waves, and then the third wave, and like after the third wave, there's a 4th wave. So that's already kind of elongated. Most mob fights are 3 waves max, maybe 4, and so on the 4th wave, you have this brand new enemy type, which is a big deal. It's a brand new enemy type. We've never seen it before. It's this big mini boss guy who does 2 damage. He's like crazy, and you beat him. And then you have 3 more waves of enemies. And then at the end of that, on the 6th wave, or I guess the, what would it be? The 8th wave. Yeah, there's 8 waves. You have 2 of the same mini bosses you just fought. And that was legitimately a moment where I just put down my controller and I just went, I just stared at the screen. I said, I can't believe they've done this. Because not only are you blowing the expectations way out of the water for what you thought would be just a normal mob boss, but the fact that you just took an enemy that was really cool and a memorable moment, and you decided to immediately recycle him. I guess maybe it's a page for game design, is to just never do this. It's fine, and sometimes it's okay when you're playing a certain game and a boss type enemy shows up as like a standard, like a weakened version as a standard enemy in like the last levels of the game. That's kind of like okay. But when you're reintroducing the big bad enemy you just fought, like imagine any boss that was super hard to beat, and then imagine you have to fight immediately after that two of them. Like that is just to finish that wave. That is so demoralizing that it's just not a good design, and I can't abide by it. It's an awful feeling that it feels like the game is just pushing you for the sake of pushing you. If it was just introduced 3 of them at once or something, I would be almost more okay with that, because it's like, okay, look, this is the challenge, we're being transparent about it. But it feels almost like you're being cheated, or you're being forcibly almost trolled in a way by being reintroduced as boss. So that's where it felt a little bit unfair, because it kind of broke the rules, so to speak, or the loops of the game and what you expected. And there is some room for that, I'm not gonna lie, like Biowater or Blighttown, as I will call it, definitely mixes up a lot of things. Funnily enough, the Center Roads malfunctioning bench, I didn't figure out how to fix that till the very end of the game. I didn't think you could. I thought it was just stuck like that. But there's a hidden wall right in that same room where you can basically just break it and fix it. I was like, okay. But yeah. There's definitely a lot of difficulty spikes in the game. I would say certain enemies, like the roaches or whatever in Sinner's Road, those were a very spike or whatever. But what's great about Hollow Knight, just not only from a gameplay perspective, is I think the main word of this game is scalability. And Hollow Knight is the same way, where from where you start in the game to where you end up with your powers and the enemies you fight and how skilled you are at just navigating the world and navigating the game, it feels amazing from where you started. For example, and I really thought I wouldn't get this ability, but you're going through basically till the end of Act 2, you get double jump. That in a Metroid style game is unheard of. Double jump is like one of the very first things you get, and to delay it so often, I think, is a testament to Team Cherry's game design. It's really, really impressive that they delayed such a basic mechanic, that they made double jump a big deal in an era where that mechanic, it's just kind of baked into so many different things. It's really a great feeling and really cool to see them actually utilize that. And then not long after that, in Act 3, you get one of the, I think, the last power-ups, which is the Silk Needle jump, or the super jump, where essentially Hornet will throw her needle to any vertical surface. She'll throw it immediately up, and if it hits anything, it'll latch onto it and pull her up vertically. So this is kind of the equivalent to Hollow Knight's horizontal dash ability, where it can build up crystals and then just go infinitely horizontal spaces. Hornet can go infinitely vertical spaces, and I think that's a really cool marriage of these two different art styles and fighting styles. I think it's also interesting that, Hornet, she does feel very distinct. I kind of reviewed the footage of her from Hollow Knight 1, because, again, I really don't remember a lot of it since I played it almost 10 years ago, or whenever it came out. And I was really surprised that a lot of the things that they had in her moveset in that game as a boss fight, they incorporated into this game, and it didn't really break or whatever the game. Of course, the only main difference is that she's very vocal in the first game, and this one she's much more somber, and her attitude's more or less the same. It's very somber, very straightforward, kind of like an icy cold exterior, but still has a lot of sort of positive, hopeful things to say. And she never loses hope. She always perseveres in her endeavors, even when in the third act all the characters are thinking, oh, the kingdom is doomed, this is it's all over. She still is the one telling them not to despair, and that I'm just going to fix it kind of thing. I guess touching on that, there's also the NPCs of the game, and the dialogue is good in the game, but when it comes to dialogue, or like specifically the lore entries and edits in the series, it's sometimes, I get it, starts to sound ancient and weird and convoluted, but it's legitimately difficult to understand. Maybe that's by design, but I feel like there's a better way to get a point across without having it sound completely like nonsensical. Like, even if you translate it directly, it still is like a convoluted word structure rather than the phrases themselves are unusual. You can still understand unusual sentences while it's just like, okay, the daughter of Weaver's first sinner, blah blah blah, this is the fourth iteration of whatever. I don't know, I just feel like there was it could have been written better, I guess, just rather than just something, okay, I know I'm going to read this, I'm literally not going to remember any of it kind of thing. So there's that. But the dialogue for the characters are very good. I think the fan favorite are probably Sherma and I forget her name, Chakra. Oh yeah, Chakra. I was going to say Pushanka. That's her call sign or whatever. And so Chakra and Sherma are kind of the main, I think the most two favorite kind of characters in the game. A lot of the NPCs, there's definitely side quests that are involved with them. I would say my favorite thing about this game actually is the fleas. The fleas and the flea master and the flea caravan are just they always make me smile. They're a great addition to the game as one of a very memorable NPC. In the original Hollow Knight, I recall there was a series of like worms, and the worms would go back to their master, and that was fine. There was like another collectible that worked essentially the same way. But the fleas in this one are just more adorable, more fun. And at the end of the game, you have a little mini game where they give you a bait and switch, thinking, oh, you're gonna have to fight them, but really no, it's an actual carnival, and you actually get to experience the flea carnival finally, which also is very challenging once you do it. But in this one you have rosaries, and so there's this very kind of heavy religious theme where you have a citadel, and I can't help but think, if Hollow Knight is Dark Souls, then Silksong is Bloodborne. It's not the Dark Souls of 2D action games, it's the Bloodborne of them. And so they do have this, I'm gonna say methodology, but this theme of like religious institutions, on corruption, on the idea of characters being controlled, and ultimately it's interesting how the overarching story reveals itself. Again, I'm not gonna lie, there's not a very strong or large story here. I mean, even in Hollow Knight, it was just a very basic, hey, the land is corrupt, go quell the corruption by taking over the king's throne and essentially becoming the new Lord Gwyn, basically, that takes on the corruption and allows it to essentially be placated, more or less. So the big thing now is that when you die, your rosaries will disappear, and so that is a really big area of contention for a lot of people, because I had a bunch of rosaries on me, and when I died, I didn't realize that I lost them. I still remember it was only 200, which at the time, I mean, felt like a lot, but as the game went on, it really, really wasn't. Again, it's a very interesting end game kind of economy. Eventually, of course, you'll max out everything, and then you just use beads to buy beast shards that you can fill your tool inventory up, which is a pretty decent reason to still hold on to beads, I would say. It is frustrating, though, that as you're playing the game, you need beads essentially to buy things at stores, obviously, but the main thing is that you'll come across Chakra, and she'll sell you the map that you need in order to understand and progress throughout the level, and the only way to get it is to have rosaries on you, and if you don't have enough, which you usually don't, it's basically saying you have to play this entire level without dying in order to even have the opportunity to get the map or get things like a bench, or otherwise you just grind in that area. Of course, it does work exactly like Dark Souls, where if you do end up dying and losing your rosaries, if you get to where you last died, you'll have a silk cocoon, you break that open, you get all your rosaries back. Pretty simple stuff. Another thing they introduced in this game that I really actually think is a very cool mechanic is the needlin. And this is essentially an instrument that Hornet uses to play certain musical songs that will activate certain things in the environment. And I'm a really big fan of music as a mechanic in games. I think it's a very creative, cool thing. Ever since Ocarina, I've always really appreciated it. Similarly, in Hollow Knight, you use the dream sword or whatever, to the dream blade, to see people's minds and their memories and what they're thinking. And in the same way, the use of the needle, the character starts singing, and it gives you a little song about what they're actually feeling, what they're thinking, and how it kind of affects them. Another big mechanical change that I recall, not exactly beating Hollow Knight, is that when you heal now, it's not a charge thing, it's instantaneous. And it's also something where you get 3 masks or hearts or whatever immediately. And you kind of stand still and have to wait for the animation to finish. So it's always a tactical thing when you decide to do it. Aside from that, there's certain relics you collect, and that you can turn them in for rosaries, psalm cylinders, lots of different collectible things. But most of the things you're going to be collecting are different tools, equipables, upgrades that you can use to make Hornet deadlier, faster, etc. And what's really funny is that you compare these with the different style of attacks, the crests, and make a really interesting builds. I think it's really possible to make a very cool variety of builds in this game, and I know there's a lot of potential for it. Again, another thing, I love how the environment sometimes interacts. For example, if you hit a bug and it lands on spikes, it'll make a sound effect indicating that. There's a lot of things in this game that I just was really surprised at. Even as I was finishing the game, I had no idea this was a mechanic or a thing, but you do have this one upgrade that shoots random fireballs, and you find it in a place where there is like no water, and so you never get to see it interact, and so think, oh, it just, whatever, it just hit the water. But I was using it later, and it ended up missing an enemy, hitting the water, and it actually made like a little sizzle out fire effect with a bunch of smoke. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's like a mechanic that you probably would never see unless you were using it constantly. And so they really made the world feel more real by adding a mechanic or a little thing there that doesn't, like, it's not televised or shown to you at all. Speaking of actual hidden mechanics, something again that isn't super useful, but I was just shocked that it actually worked. In the same area, I was using these electrical charged daggers, and when the daggers hit the water, it made a area of effect, and it basically electrified the entire lake and the entire area where the enemies were. And I thought, oh wow, I had no idea that would actually work. It's one of those things where you see it and you think, oh, I wonder if this would actually work, and it actually does. And yeah, so the world of Silksong is very well crafted, and it feels really good exploring. Especially, I'd say the number one upgrade that I enjoyed, that I needed, was the speed upgrade that allows Hornet to run faster. That was a real game changer for me. And it's funny, in the same area, I never put 2 and 2 together in terms of the experimentation, that yes, there's this potion that also increases your movement speed, but I didn't put 2 and 2 together and think that, if I take the potion along with the dash ability, I'll be able to run even faster. And slow enough, if you do that, it opens up a secret portal. I'm just like, man, this game is crazy. Again, Silksong, it's speaking of scalability, it's just so cool to go back to older areas. And yes, okay, you're going to go back and be able to do things like find secret hidden new things, or off the beat sort of hidden secrets or traps or whatever. But what I really appreciated is that, at the beginning of the game, you have one jump and that's it. And by the end of the game, you have a double jump with possibly an attack attached to it, plus an infinite vertical loop or, movement. And the game accommodates for all of this. It just feels so good to go back to a level 1 starting area, and your mobility is so extreme that it feels like you've really mastered the game. And by the end of the game, even navigating the abyss, it feels really, really good to just be able to dodge everything and run as fast as possible, and just know that you're reaching peak mobility and focus. And again, that's what's really fun about this game, is that no matter how hard an encounter is, if you just end up grinding at it, you'll eventually overcome it. And there were times where I definitely was playing this game and I kind of had to almost not focus, but do the opposite, like shut off my brain, where I was at a boss, like the swamp boss, for example. And I just thought, look, this is way too difficult. This is way too ridiculous. There were like 4 waves of enemies just to get to the opportunity to fight the boss. It's something where it's like, okay, you have to just learn the boss's mechanics, its movement, and just lock in and just hope for the best. And it's at that point where I actually ended up turning my brain off, where I kind of assumed, okay, you're not going to make it. You're not going to actually beat the boss this run, but you're just going to get used to its, you know, its style and its patterns, and you're just going to keep fighting it until eventually something clicks, and you eventually get so used to it you don't take any damage. I definitely had to do that for the final boss, where I was fighting her, first phase. I just thought it's not possible to not get hit during this first phase. Sure enough, about an hour later, I was able to fight that entire first phase without getting hit once, and it was just like, wow, yeah, okay, this is happening now. And it's technically it's a 3-phase boss fight. Well, I mean, it's hard to say, phases, because sometimes they'll say that they're dying, or sometimes they'll like ramp up. So technically it's 3 phases, which is correct. I was actually expecting the final boss to be 2 phases and then another different boss after that, but no, the final boss is the final boss. And my only kind of gripe is that I do kind of enjoy it when the actual final boss is actually a little bit easier than the pre-final boss, because it kind of drains that whole finalized experience of being like, okay, I'm finally going to beat this thing. If it's really too difficult, then it's like, well, what happened with me is that I had to just give up that evening and just beat it the next night. So the next day, I was just doing a bunch of backtracking things, checking, did I miss this secret? And so eventually I just went to the boss and just grinding at it until eventually I just got it. And it was kind of anticlimactic, I guess. So, I mean, one example might be, I think, Tears of the Kingdom, where you beat Ganondorf and it's this big battle, and then the very thing after that is the final Ganon fight, which is really more ceremonial. It's kind of like you don't really have to focus or do anything. It uses a completely different skill set. It's more kind of like, okay, this is the final boss. But yeah, either way, I think it was an appropriate final boss. It was definitely hard, but I want to say, like, it was up there, but I don't think it was the hardest. I would say High Halls. Well, it depends, right? Because the whole thing with High Halls is that as hard as it was, the way I was able to beat it is I just backtrack. I literally gave up. I actually put down the controller and I walked away from the game. It's one of the few times I've rage quit from a game because it was just ridiculous. But what I ended up doing is I said, okay, I know how these games work. Do I still want to beat this game? Do I still want to play it? Like, yes, I still enjoy it. I'm more than halfway through. I've committed. I've gone past the point of no return. And so I just backtracked, found a bunch of upgrades for health, agility. In fact, I found entire areas that I didn't even know existed. And this really blew my mind. Into the end of Act 2, and even, Act 3, there were entire locations I had undiscovered. I had no idea they were there. And by the end of the game, it was really interesting still finding new locations that I thought I had no idea this was here. And I had no idea this was a thing. So essentially. And they're so optional. For example, like Wormways. Like, if you never go there, you never get the extra health upgrade. And it's like, that's a really big deal. And if you never go there, you'll never know. I think it is good, though, I guess, in the design aspect, that they decide that, okay, End of Act 2 is the final boss, but they do that so it encourages player to backtrack a lot through the entire game, because at that point, it does tell you you've unlocked 100% of the map. But at the same token, it's kind of like, the reason they're telling you to do that, or telegraphing you to do that, is because in Act 3, there's a lot of things in Act 2 that are cut off. The environment's changed. You can't access the same areas as they were, and certain NPCs, I think, are missing. And I don't know if there's anything missable in this game. I feel like there might be, because just of the nature of what I just explained. For me, I was able to get 100% completion, and also that includes the bestiary. I was actually really worried, and when I started Silksong, I was playing it on Game Pass, so I wasn't really really concerned about 100%ing this. But it was kind of, I was getting near the end of the game, and it's like, all right, if it's like one of those things tacitly. I know that if I beat the game with 100% completion, I'll get like with the achievement or the reward or whatever. And I was kind of thinking about it and looking at it, and it was funny because I was grinding at that boss, and I was still only at 99% complete, and I just kind of knew, right, if I after like 50 attempts, I realized, wait a second, if I beat this boss with 99%, and then I beat it, I'm probably going to reload my last save, and then I have to beat it again at 100%. So I realized I'm literally 1% away. What do I have to do? And by the way, for people who are struggling with this, if you've literally done everything in the game and you still only have 99%, and the mementos, by the way, don't count towards that 100%, what you need to do is essentially visit Eve, or Eva, as she's known, and she gives you the final upgrade, but it's not on your map, it's not telegraphed or televised. And so that was the last thing I was missing. I literally just needed to talk to one NPC that was like, oh right, I forgot about this character, and they kind of give you the final thing. I think they only give you it once you've upgraded everything else, so it's literally the last thing you have to do to get 100%, and there's a lot of things that I think people would forget about. But yeah, the basic gameplay loop of Hollow Knight, it feels really good, it feels really responsive. Of course, I think the first Hollow Knight, why it got so much, what stood out to me is that the combat was very snappy, very responsive. When you hit enemies, it felt good. When you hit certain slowdowns, it felt correct. When you got hit, it felt fair, even though it was super hard. And the very basic mechanics of the game just feel really well done, just really, really accurate, well made, etc. And it feels it just feels very snappy and responsive, and Silksong is the same, if not better. Again, I'm just thinking back on story. In Silksong, there's this whole lore about the Weavers, and that Hornet is the child of a spider clan or something that can weave silk. And so while in Hollow Knight, it was kind of all about the void and the emptiness of the shell, so to speak. Hornet's story is all about silk and the consumption of silk, and also the void comes into that as well. But it's interesting how the overarching story becomes, the themes of control, the themes of what is silk, what is this thing inside of us that weaves our destinies. And it's okay. It's not the greatest story ever. It really is one of these games that really leaps and stands on its gameplay and its exploration rather than its story. The music is very good. I would say I think music is a very big component, the atmosphere of everything. But it's very rare for me to enjoy a game nowadays just based on the merits of its gameplay. It really is just that good. And I can see why some people were mega fans of this series, waiting 7 years or whatever for it. I personally can't fathom that. It seems like way too long to wait for a DLC of a very good indie game, but still just an indie game. Again, my biggest drawback is that it's just so long. It's not like 90, almost 100 hours long. I was talking to someone else. They said they put in 200 hours and hadn't even finished it yet. So it's definitely a lengthy game, and it's just amazing how much content there is. If you had your dream project and you actually kept adding to it for 7 years and then have the gall to charge only $20 for it, that is insane. That's the price of a DLC. And so on that note, despite any reservations or whatever critiques I might have had of it, you absolutely should play this game. You should absolutely just buy it, just because it's $20 in a market where most AAA standard games release at $80, $90 sometimes. With taxes included, it's probably more than that. It's crazy. It's so ballsy and such a big move, and the quality you get is insane. It is the most undervalued game or underpriced game on the market you could possibly buy. If you're a guy who likes sales and Steam sales, this is the Steam sale. The price for this game is ridiculous. It's kind of stupid. After I beat it and putting in 100 hours and the quality of the game, it is there are other indie games that charge more than this. Like, it should be at least $30, frankly, at least $30. It feels like a robbery, the fact it's only $20, and I was playing it on Game Pass, and now as I think about this, Game Pass is going from $20 to $30 plus taxes. That's around $35. So the price of Game Pass is more than this, which is just stupid, and that's a whole other topic I'll get into maybe later. But please support Team Cherry, support this game. It is absolutely Game of the Year material. I know it's up against Expedition 33, which I'm not a huge fan of. It's fine, but this is my Game of the Year 100%. I feel very similar to when, you know, Astrobot won Game of the Year, and I'm just here playing Tears of the Kingdom. I don't think Tears of the Kingdom won anything, I think a couple years ago, but I still loved it all the same. But yeah, I can't think of much else to say about the game except it's really, really, really good. It's definitely worth the hype. It is absolutely a real video game that is released in 2025, and it's worth every penny. It's absolutely an amazing experience. It's definitely challenging. It's definitely pretty memorable. But yeah, it's a great game, and you should go try it. Anyway, guys, that's all I got to say about this one. Really glad I played it, and can't believe I put in as much time as I did because I didn't feel like it. I'll see you guys later. Bye.